we go strapped and we up. Never forget all the memories. Bro, like, see, y'all don't want me to start like a little singing channel, huh? Like, I think y'all would be mad, honestly. Honestly, I think y'all would be pissed off, really. Like, truthfully, I think y'all would be kind of mad if I just went like all American Idol, like Ruben stuttered on y'all's asses. No, I'm joking. All right, so let's just see. What? -$200. What is up, guys? It's your boy Sean Wzdm here, and if you don't already know, I am a Houston-based social media content creator that is specializing in helping small businesses grow and make a large impact on their audience. Last week, I released a video talking about the stuff that I keep in my bag, and that included like a Sony a7 IV, a couple of Tamron lenses, and some other things. And if you haven't seen that video, I'm gonna put it right here so you guys can go and check that out. But I truly appreciate everyone that went and took the time to watch that video. I didn't expect this one to go. It went really well though, and for my first video back, I am so happy that you guys took the time. Today we're actually talking about a camera that I don't keep in just that bag, but I keep it in my regular bag. If my pockets were a little bit bigger, if I was wearing some Jinko jeans, I would actually keep it in my pocket. It is my absolute favorite camera that I have, and it is the Lumix Gx85. Look at this little guy. He's so cute. So the Lumix Gx85 here, this is a great camera for the money. I'm just gonna off the bat, so you don't even have to watch the whole video. It's a fantastic camera for the money. I think they go for about $400 to $500, and probably with this setup, I think you're looking at a more into the $500 range with this 20mm f1.7 lens. So if you're not familiar, this camera is a camera that came out, I want to say, should have did my research on this one. I think it came out in like 2018 area, somewhere around there, and it is a 4K capable for videos. Not that great at it. I want to say it's like a 12 megapixel micro four thirds camera, very compact, very easy to walk around with, and very portable. But what I'm gonna do in this video is talk about 3 pros and 3 cons that I found with this camera. But first, we're gonna start with a little bit of a story. So rewind a few years back, and I used to work at a pawn shop. With me working at a pawn shop, my off days were literally spent taking photos and videos for people, sometimes shooting for myself, part-time going to other pawn shops and seeing what they had to try to find the best deal. As I went into this one pawn shop and I was looking around, and I usually, in this area, the camera section is kind of hit or miss. Going to a pawn shop, and sometimes they'll have like a really high quality piece of glass, or they'll have a really cool body, but it's not all the time. So I walked into this pawn shop and I go over to their camera case and I see this small black and silver camera. Didn't really think too much of it, and I passed it up. I think I've seen it at this point about 3 times since I'd been in there. I usually frequent this same pawn shop. It had a zoom lens on it. I wasn't too interested in it. And then I looked on the back and I seen a little 4K symbol. I was like, 4K, okay. So I asked them, could I see it? They let me check it out. It said a Lumix Gx85. And if you notice, this one that I just showed you is not black and silver. It is black on black. And there's a little story behind that as well, and I'm gonna go into that. But I put the camera on layaway, did some research, and I went and got it out. And I was thinking, man, what can I do? What can I do with this camera? I had this zoom lens on it. I just kind of carried it around. I wasn't really liking it. It was the kit zoom lens. It was equivalent to like a 75 to 300 or something like that. It was something along those lines. It wasn't too fun. It wasn't too crazy, but it was an okay camera. I still didn't know too much about it. But then everything changed once I got that small 20mm f1.7 for it. I am a pancake lover. I love pancakes in real life, and I love pancakes on cameras because they're compact, they deliver a sweet image, And who doesn't love pancakes? So the good thing about that, like I had a pancake lens when I was on the Canon system. I had a 40mm that I loved. I went to Houston Camera Exchange and they actually had this lens on there in their discounted section. And look how tiny and compact that is. It's super light, very sharp, very unassuming. So if you're walking around doing some street photography stuff, most people aren't gonna really notice you because you got a pancake. They're like, oh, yummy pancakes. Wow, yum, yum, yum. And you're like, yeah, cool, smile so I can get a picture and leave. While I have the lens off, you can see these tiny sensor. I think that a micro four thirds is a little bit small, is quite a bit smaller than a crop sensor. Obviously, this video is not going to be very technical. Did no research on these core parts before I started. Ended up getting the black and silver Lumix Gx85, and then I got the 20mm, and then it clicked to me. I would take the camera everywhere and I would just shoot, and I was just like, man, this is a really good image. This is a cool image. I was shooting everything in RAW, and it looked just great, and it was such an easy camera to carry around with me. It has image stabilization, so you can actually get away with shooting in some pretty dark scenarios because the lens will go down to a f1.7. Get rid of one thing about the micro four thirds system that I really like, and it makes it so hard to get rid of this camera for me, is the fact that the lenses are so compact. And now that the system has been out for quite a while, it's kind of like a older, I know I bring up the Canon system a lot, but it kind of reminds me of the older Canon system where the EF glass is just everywhere, so you were able to get stuff for a pretty cheap price. And it's some really high quality glass. Lumix actually partners with Leica on a lot of their glass that they made, not this one in particular, but the 20mm is a Japanese piece of glass coupled with the Tiffin Pro Mist. Gives you a really sweet image, especially for some night photography. I had the black and silver one. It was really great, but out of nowhere, I carried that camera everywhere. It took some really good images, and I'll probably put some here somewhere, but took some really good images with that camera, and I was super happy with it. And then one day I turn it on and it would not stop shooting pictures, and it's just and I'm like, okay. So I turn it off, turn it back on, turn off, turn it back on, doing the same thing. Turns out it was a common problem. It would just keep shooting and shooting until it died, basically. And it had a battery draining issue where it would just die. Like I would take it out of my bag and it would be dead. So it really bummed me out, because at this point, I think I was at kind of like a little bit of a slump with photography. And that's what I was doing for the most part at that time. It was a lot of photography. I didn't do as much video, and I really kind of found my rhythm again with that camera. I feel like I don't really want to put too much into the gear, because I think you can go out with your phone and have a pretty good session once you kind of get in that mode. But I will say that there are some cameras, like when people would talk about a Leica and they're like, oh man, this $8,000 camera with patina on it, it's so beautiful, but I love it because you just take it out and you just want to shoot it. It's like, I thought that was kind of corny, obviously. Once I got the Lumix Gx85, I got it. It really made sense to me, and it brought me back to like my earlier time shooting, where I just took the camera and it wasn't like a setup shoot, or it wasn't this big deal. I would just be sitting at the coffee shop with some friends and I'm like, hey, I got my camera, and I take it out and just start taking pictures, and then I end up getting some images that are just very memorable, fun, and high quality images. Surprisingly, even though it's a lower megapixel camera, the images looked really good on it. I was pretty bummed out. I was like, man, this really sucks. Weirdly enough, I didn't see this camera around a lot. Like, I'm telling you, this was the first one I ever seen in that pawn shop, and I had been on photography YouTube for quite some time, and I never really seen people talking about it. I was so surprised when I was looking into the camera online, and I seen that there was a black on black model, and I was like, oh my god, I want it. But I was like, I don't really need it. At the time, the silver one was working fine for me. But then I had a customer at the pawn shop that I worked at actually bring a camera in. He's like, yeah, I want to get a loan on this camera. I was like, okay, cool. What do you got? black on black Lumix Gx85, and I'm like, no freaking way. And so it was pretty crazy. It was almost like fate. And I'm like looking at it, and I was like, man, I really love this camera. And I think I would gush to this guy. Like, I would literally have my Lumix Gx85 just on a shelf, and I would just randomly take it down and just take pictures all the time at my old job, like all the time. So he would see it every now and then. We would talk about cameras pretty frequently. So I would imagine that he was like, you know? And so he brings it in. And I'm like, oh, man. So he's bringing it in. I was like, he's going to pick it up, though. He usually was a pretty good customer, and he would always pick his things up. He lost this one. And I definitely snapped it up. And, yeah, that's all she wrote on that. I've had this for a couple of years now with no issues as far as battery leak or shooting issues. So I am going to get into the pros and the cons about this camera. First pro that I have is going to be the size and how compact it is. This camera, in comparison to, like, let's say I'll bring my phone up. Of course, it's thicker than my phone, yes, but it is just a tiny, high quality camera that delivers images that I like more than my phone a lot of the times. I love the size of it. It makes it easier, and something that I always like when someone's getting into photography and they ask me like, hey, you know, what are some of the things that you did when you first started? I always tell them, I'm like, get a cheap camera, or if you're past your phone, if you've been shooting a little bit and you feel like you've outgrown what your phone can do and you have like a certain image that you're trying to create, I always try to tell people, I'm like, get a camera that's inexpensive, that you don't mind knocking around a little bit. Shoot, even get an old DSLR. I mean, you can get like an 80D now for like $300, and it's like, that wouldn't be a bad camera, honestly. I always tell them, get a camera that you don't mind knocking around a little bit, and something you can take with you everywhere. You lower the bar of entry of creativity. You are now sitting at the table at your local Starbucks, and you're like, oh man, nice, I'm gonna make a cool picture here. Or man, this coffee cup looks cool. Oh man, my friend's sitting there eating their Danish, looks cool. You know, things like that. You are now more creative more often, therefore I think you're putting more reps in. You're gonna get better at taking photos and just creating in general. Number two is gonna be the sensor, that micro four thirds sensor. Yes, the image from this camera is fantastic. One of my favorite things to do with the Lumix, if I'm ever in like a little bit of a slump, I call it the black and white project. I'll take the camera and set it to monochrome, and as you can see right here, as you can see right here, it's in black and white, and that's what I see. That's all I see when I'm shooting it. And that I'll take the camera and just walk around with it for like a month and just shoot nothing but black and white. And it's black and white raw, so I can change the image once I get in the Lightroom, but I try my best to stay in black and white. And I think it's such a good project that all photographers and creatives should probably do at some point. To me, I feel like it helps me be a little bit more creative with my lighting, and also I'm looking for the light, I'm looking for the contrast. And a lot of times, even if it was a black and white image it was shot as black and white, I'll take it over into my computer and I'll look at it in Lightroom and I'm like, oh man, this actually looks really good in color. That's happened a few times. And I took this image of my mom that I love on the Lumix, and it was during like the black and white project. I'm gonna go on the record now to say that it is the Fujifilm x100v killer. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. I don't know if it's an X100V killer. I mean, I've shot a little bit on the X100V just a couple times, and it is a fantastic camera, but this one is really, really good too. And so I think if you are in the market for that pocketable, high quality kind of range finder compact camera, and you can't get a hold of something from Fujifilm, I think that the Lumix cameras in this like line might not be a bad option. Third thing, The third thing I'm going to talk about here is going to be battery life. Like I said in the with the last one, the battery life wasn't that great because it had that battery leak issue, but that just kind of happened out of nowhere. Honestly, before that, I never really had any issues with the battery on it. I can go months. Granted, this isn't my main camera, so look at this. This is the context that I'm coming from, is keeping it in my bag or on my shelf, or shooting with it probably 10 to 20% of the time. Most of the times if I'm shooting, I'm using my phone or I'm using the Sony a7 IV here. So that is the context that I'm coming from. But within that context, it gets fantastic battery, and there's little time that I really have to worry about it. And I also shoot just photos on it. I don't shoot any video on it, and that'll lead me into my first bad. The focus is a little slow. It doesn't have any fancy features like eye tracking, or it has like a face tracking mode, but it just doesn't work as well as like something like, once again, like an old Canon camera. They kind of had that on lock, but the Lumix camera just doesn't really do it as well. It does capture 4K footage, and I mean, if you wanted to use it for that, you definitely can, but it's just not going to be as good. You aren't going to have like something like a mic jack. You're not going to have all those. It's definitely more of a photo forward camera, but it does do a little bit of video. The second bad thing that I have is going to be the screen doesn't lock when you use the EVF. So when you bring the camera up to your face, like so, to use this EVF here, that's right there, to use this EVF screen here is touch, which is great. I do like that it has a touch screen on the back because it's just as responsive as like a phone, honestly. But my nose touches the touchscreen, and when I use the EVF sometimes, it will move my focus area. And unfortunately, this camera, one thing, this is like my, I'd say it's 2.5 or 3. It doesn't have like a center lock mode, which if it was up to me, I would just leave it on center lock at all times. I think it's rare that when it comes to framing on this camera with the type of shooting I do on it, it's rare that I'm trying to like get something in the shot like off to the side. Like let's say it's someone walking by and I'm trying to get them in the shot and not the rest of the background or something. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like I off center. It's most of the times I'm shooting in a more no, most of the time I'm shooting in a more street style, so I'm trying to keep my subject in the center of my frame. So I know I said I had 3, and I'm gonna tell you one thing, unless you count that as the third, I really don't have a third bad on this camera, because it's almost like, okay, listen, hear me out, hey, hear me out. I said the screen doesn't lock, but there has been times that I've used the screen to move my focus as I have it up to my face, and I'm shooting with it pretty close. I use the screen as a touchpad to move my focus around. So it's like I give the bad, but I take the bad back almost, because I do use it pretty often for that, and it has helped me lock in focus on certain things. Like I said, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Other than that, the camera is great, man. It really is. If you see, I've been seeing more and more videos pop up about this camera on YouTube lately, and it's like I get so happy. I don't know why. I get so happy. Like, it's like anytime I see a video, I'll watch it in its full entirety, and I'm just like sitting there smiling and nodding the whole time, like I'm like proud of it or something, like it was my camera that I made and that everyone's enjoying it. I guess it's cool just to see. It's like when you have an album that you're listening to by an artist that is like pretty big. Like if like, oh, for example, I like Denzel Curry. He has an album called Melt Your Eyes. It's the Melt Your Eyes See Truth or something album. I just call it Melt Your Eyes. Here's the album cover. Boom. Fantastic album. I love it from front to back. I'll listen to it over and over again, and I love the deluxe album. And if I was to like see someone and they're like, oh man, that is like my favorite album too, I really love that album, I'm like, I love it. This is what I feel. This is like my this is my Denzel Curry melt your eyes, see the truth of cameras. No. But no, it's a great camera, man. It has a pretty good button layout on the back, plenty of buttons to choose from, so you don't feel like you are missing out on anything. You get 2 dials here and on the back, so you get those for adjustment of like your aperture and your shutter speed. Yeah, man, I really can't think of anything else to really say about the camera. It is fantastic. My next thing that I want to get for it is the 85mm equivalent lens. And I think that would be it. Or either that, or I want something really wide. If you notice here, I'm actually shooting on the wider lens. I'm shooting on a 24. Look at all this. Look at all this space. Look at all this space. And I'm actually using an old school setup, mic-wise. I am actually using the H4n, Zoom H4n, H4n, plugged up to a battery bank, because if the H4n, if batteries were a juice box, the H4n is a little badass kid just pause. That was crazy. That was crazy. But anyways, the H4n would really tear down some batteries. So I have it hooked up to an external little battery pack. Fantastic. You can use it forever and get really good audio. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning into this video and watching me yap about my favorite camera. And I hope that it helped you make an informative buying decision if you are interested in getting a compact camera, but you can't pay over $2,000 for an X100 or you don't want to get bopped over the head for an X100V, or you don't want to say, hey, I'm gonna get an XE4. Oh my God, y'all want a lot of money for this too. So I thank you so much. I appreciate it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Go and check out the last video about the bag tour, and I will see you guys on the next one. And remember, it's not goodbye, it is see you later. We are filming. We are done filming. This was a fun video.